Okay, started the recording. Welcome everyone to number 13 of the Rocket Community Sync. This time the show is brought to you by Sergio Shobaniak. Alban is in Paris, Iagos is on holidays. So this time the team size is a little bit smaller. And maybe we can quickly start with the Rocket Netties workshop, which I would like to show, and then we can move on to other valid points if nobody has objections. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So on Monday this week, we gave a Rocket and concretely also Rocket Netties workshop, a 3-hour workshop in Hamburg. And prepared a pretty long presentation for it. It's like 51 slides. I set up a small link in the community notes for it, in case you're interested to reuse it or show other people the basics of Rocket or the semantics of a part. It's a resource which you can abuse. And another thing that we did in the context of this workshop is, we prepared a Vagrant-based setup in which you can simply Vagrant up and start a virtual machine with Rocket inside, and also with a complete Rocket Netties environment. And this is the dashboard, which you hopefully can see. Oh, somehow I draw something here. And this dashboard is completely hosted by Rocket and Kubernetes underneath. And yeah, you can do the typical things like launch containers and stuff, but using Rocket as the container runtime. So I think this is a nice showcase. Okay, that's all I have from my side. Any questions? Okay, no questions so far. Then the next point, yeah, I would have loved to introduce Casey, a new team member of the Rocket team, but he's in another meeting. So we're going to skip this probably to the next week. And in that case, that's okay. Yeah, we can skip this to the next week. So in this case, I would like to hand over to Tamer, who's going to talk about the container runtime interface in Kubernetes.
Yes, I have sent out an email containing the implementation possibilities that we should investigate when implementing container runtime interface. Yes. So for those who are not familiar with it, basically Kubernetes kubelet team is trying to streamline the integration point for container runtimes, and we'll have to expose some low-level operations.
It feels like I know this one's coming. It feels like the custom data should be used by fucking.
Sorry about that. Anyways, Sergius, can you take over? We'll go to another room. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take over, and I'm also going to share the screen because there is a small document that Tamer, while the guys are going to another room, which Tamer presented on how we could actually implement this inside Rocket, and this may also be interesting for the colleagues who are working on the KVM stuff, how we do this in conjunction with that. And how I understood the document is that we essentially have 3 proposals currently on the table on how to implement the container runtime interface. The first being to use systemd's machine control to manipulate all the containers inside a pod, which I guess has the lowest traction for us, but this only applies if the stage one or somehow has a good control or a good interface with machine control. So I'm not sure how portable this is across all stages. The second proposition is to have some notion of an immutable pod, such that if Kubernetes wants to restart a container inside a pod, we essentially kill the whole pod, just spec out the delta to the initial pod spec and launch that one instead. And then the third proposal is to have like a one-to-one mapping of apps and pods. So we a little bit like loosen the whole semantics that we currently have with the pod concept, at least in the context of Kubernetes, and use Rocketfly to understand namespaces and C groups. And I think this one caused the biggest traction, the biggest discussion points. So we have currently like those three proposals, and I hope you guys are back in another room, Tamer, so I can give back the mic to you.
You've summarized it. Great. Yes, we are working on the API where how we are going to integrate with the kubelet. But I also wanted to open a discussion regarding the implementation of these low-level operations. So any comment or feedback is welcome. I believe you guys all have access to the documents. You don't have to offer any solution. You just say this solution is bad because of this, and it will be very helpful.
One question from my side, Tamer. Which solution is kind of the most probable to land? I think the machine CTL one would be my...
Yes, that's the one we have been imagining the implementation as, but Luca offered the third solution. So that's promising as well.
The fly one or which one?
The one per one mapping. Hey, Hannah.
And so yesterday we were talking a bit about that, and because the proposal from Kubernetes is very fuzzy and not well defined. So they have a specification of an interface which is quite minimal. So it's just basically starting a pod and then adding and removing application from inside the pod. But the motivation for that specification, they are very broad. So it's they say, we want to have this dynamic interface because we are not happy about having the runtime implementing the pod semantic because they will implement it in some way that we don't control. And we're not happy about that because we rely on the runtime to properly implement all the bits in the pod semantic. And then because some runtime, for example, Docker, they don't have at all this concept of pod, so they have to come up with some kind of hack around it. So I got the impression that it was they were trying to push in some way where Kubernetes takes more control in the pod discussion. So basically they are more or less the owner on the pod and they just want to schedule application inside that and in order to dynamically control it, which I'm not sure it is a great idea, to be honest. I strongly
processes directly.
Sorry? We're not getting...
Brandon, we lost your audio.
I just lost Brandon too.
See and manage the processes individually. It's just moving away from the idea that you declare what you want and moving towards the idea of we want to start this process, then that process, and then stop this process. That makes sense.
Brandon, we didn't get the first part. You were completely muted.
Oh, so the thing, I don't think the kubelet team really cares about owning the process. I think the main thing that they want to do is create the C group where the pod will go into. So the kubelet will actually create the initial C group, which I feel we're pretty okay with. That lines up with how Rocket is working today. And then after that, they want to have some interface, and it can be an RPC interface. So for, say, the Rocket stage 1 that's in a virtual machine, the kubelet would talk over RPC to tell the virtual machine start this process or stop this process. So I don't think the kubelet necessarily needs to own the processes. It doesn't need to like tell systemd to directly configure or stop processes, but it needs to have some API that it can talk to.
Okay, I see. Then yeah, it is like then my proposal is probably going in the wrong direction because we still have to take ownership of everything instead of like delegating more stuff to Kubernetes. But that was the impression that I got. It was like, it was mentioning in a lot of places like it is to gain code, to gain velocity in development and to make all the runtime more or less on the same level. So I got this idea that maybe they wanted to take ownership of a bit more in the pod stuff, but that's okay, no worry. And so probably the first proposal then, like having something similar to machine-CTL that can directly control the pod and the application inside the pod, it's what will be implemented in the end. I'm still not completely sure about the details, like how many degree of freedom we currently have when talking to systemd inside the pod in order to change the environment, but it's something that must be assessed for the implementation part.
Perhaps we just aren't there yet, but I would like to see at some point an explanation of here is how a user would actually use this. For example, it might be the user says, create pod that is empty, and then says, add this pod manifest to it, or run this container or ACI within this. And I think that just looking at it from the high level as well as from the low level could help get clarity for how this will work, just what the actual interaction looks like.
I was just following the interface that is currently drafting Kubernetes, so I was thinking, this morning we were discussing something similar, like if you were to expose some kind of command line interface for that, just like stupid user command, it would be something like once you get the UID for a pod, you will be able to list application running inside that and add and remove stuff from there, which would be quite similar, I guess, from how do you currently manage services in your host with systemd. So it's like you add a new unit file, you load it, you start it, you stop it, and you check the status, and then you control specific properties like resources, limits, and other kind of isolators directly in every single service. But I don't know, to be honest. It's like still to be seen. And Tamer was looking into that a bit more.
But looking at the mere interfaces of the sandbox, it actually operations that Ian just described are perfectly thinkable, right? I see no contradiction currently. So I think what you just described, Ian, is going to be possible, I guess, just looking at the interfaces.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have some semantics that are a bit different. Like, I don't think that we currently think about a pod that is completely empty. So it's like we currently exit a pod as soon as everything inside the pod is done.
Right.
We should probably adjust some bits here and there. So I don't know how big as a semantic change it is, but probably not that much. And same for starting a pod without anything inside. So I don't know. I know that Docker is doing some kind of tricks, like they start a container, which is basically a dummy container, and then they join the other container to this container, and together they are a pod. I think we can do a bit better just thinking about that. So that's it. I think that for the first proposal, for the machine CTL stuff and talking to systemd, the only real requirement is we really need a stage one that understands and that is running systemd as a supervisor for everything inside it, and where we can basically interface to in order to do this RPC dance to control what is running inside it.
I guess we also have to change the appc spec regarding all those fine control mechanisms that we are going to introduce, right?
Yeah.
Probably. Maybe for the image one, no, but for the pod one, probably yes.
And
So I can imagine that you can like schedule. You can just like say we want to run this image that is exactly this image manifest inside the pod that is already existing, and that will still be fine. But then the pod stuff, yeah, it's gonna change.
I can't think of any change to image as well. Maybe I can't think of. Maybe Yifan or Yuan has something to add.
I don't think we have to go off and like update the appc spec day 0. Like we can get this all working and then update appc later.
And also technically, Rocket can implement more than the appc spec. It is an ACE executor. That doesn't mean that everything it does has to be part of the appc spec. It would be nice if this behavior is well specified, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for Rocket to implement it.
Mm-hmm. So for the first step, we don't care, basically.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, any more things on that topic?
One last comment. I'll send an email out today to loop in some of the Kubernetes folk as well, because I think before we get too far on our decision, we should also make sure that this is the surface area they imagine, this is the surface area our solution will cover, and everything just seems sane there. So I'll make sure to loop in at least tomorrow, and you guys get that email out today.
Okay, for me it was still a bit blocked because I don't know if systemd is enough to do what we want to do. So if it really offers all the interfaces that we need in order to manipulate the stuff inside. Because basically this proposal one where we are focusing on completely rely on that. So
yeah, that's my concern as well.
Okay, great. So finally, he arrived. I see his hat in the background. So welcome everyone, our new team member, Rocket. Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Casey?
Hi.
use yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Casey. I am new at day 3 here at Rocket in Berlin, or rather at Core Berlin, concentrating on Rocket. Probably going to be spending some time on the networking side and also whatever else needs to be done. Yeah. I come from Akamai and some other sort of more uninteresting startups.
Great. Thanks a lot for the intro.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, next topic. Just a gentle reminder. I think the pull request was hanging around like 28 days now. I addressed hopefully all commands. So unless there is no objections, tomorrow Rocket will be using of the official Go vendoring. Based on Glide. Oh, I'm sorry that we have a small guest here.
It's okay.
So, that's okay. So that's just one point I would like to mention. I found one pull request very interesting from Derek that was to use a plugin based fetcher architecture for Rocket. And Derek, do you mind just giving us a small update on this? Because I found this quite interesting and worthwhile mentioning in the...
Sure. So this was requested a few months ago. I don't remember exactly when. The basic idea is that we can have this plugin system that works kind of similar to like how Git does plugins, where there are additional binaries. And the idea being that if users to like pull things from S3 or some Google Cloud or whatever and wants to use their own protocol, it would be easy for them to just create a binary that just follows this simple spec and put it in their path, and then all of a sudden Rocket can fetch things from like S3 / or some other schema that we don't explicitly have to add support for. So I'm working on implementing this. Right now I've factored out Docker : / and HTTPS : / into 2 plugins. It's not everything's complete yet, but it's getting there.
We need this to be done also in inside of Kubernetes. This is a big part of the OCI like runtime refactor. So if you get this working, it'd be really great if you could send an email to the SIG node about what you're doing and kind of your thought process. Because I hope that the kubelet can start to do something similar as we try to get organized for V1.4.
Okay, well, remember, I'll make sure to do that.
Okay.
Have you thought
Yeah, Brandon?
through how to do storage and caching? Zoom really sucks on their muting. Have you thought through how to do caching and storage?
As far as the plugins go, right now they just fetch something, put them on disk, and tell Rocket, and Rocket, like the Rocket Binder itself, is responsible for pulling them into the store and handling the caching information. When they're done, they write a JSON blob standard out to specify like e-tag and cache information.
And so Rocket would then like check cache before calling to the plugin.
Yeah. So also, this isn't quite done in my PR, but so Rocket will look at its cache and pass its current cache information to the plugin. So it's like, here's the current like cache info. So the plugin can then specify just use the cached version instead of there's a new update.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm interested to see how that looks because this is something we need to sort out for the kubelet.
Yeah. Feedback is very welcome if this doesn't sound like the right way to do it or anyone has a better idea.
No, it sounds interesting. I just need to see the details.
Gotcha.
One question from my side. As far as I saw it in the PR, your kind of interface format between a fetcher and Rocket is ACI right now. As far as I understood, just by reading the code, does it make sense to think about OCI instead of ACI as the interface format?
Right now, my objective was just to get the current logic factored out in the plugins and then worry about any image refactoring or other specs we want to support after this.
Got it. Understood. Okay.
Hi.
Yes?
I was going to quickly comment that the idea of being able to support multiple on-disk formats might be related to the Kubernetes work Brandon was talking about, because one possible path there is for them to have a single image fetcher that can work for multiple runtimes, at which point Rocket would have to understand whatever on-disk format it spits out, probably OCI.
Well, that would probably just be a plugin if this goes through. Assuming we're still converting them to ACI files.
And one question from my side, how does it fit in the previous discussion about this Scopio, if I'm correct about the name? So this is like external fetcher. Are we planning, the two are going in the same direction in order to plug in Scopio as a plugin, or it's just two different topics that happens to be at the same time?
I think, I think how that would work is the plugins I'm writing right now could be refactored to use Scopio, and that would be about it. I'm not entirely certain. I haven't put too much thought into it.
Okay.
Okay, great. In this case, nobody objects to the last points. Luca, you have some point here. Newcomers mentoring.
Yes, it was just a discussion because we got an email this week by some SUSE guy, and they were asking what they can work on. They are basically doing some kind of Hackfest and informal hacking on some open source project. And they were wondering what they could work on. So we already have several tags in GitHub like low-hanging fruit and help wanted, which basically tells to external observer what they can start working on. From some other open source where I am collaborating, I saw that it's kind of typical, or it's a good practice to also have another one, which is kind of a mentor tag, where basically you say, this is something that we are not planning to work on, or anyways not something high priority, and we don't have anybody assigned to that. But we welcome somebody externally to do it, so like help wanted. And on top of that, if there is any issues, or if you don't know how to start, or if you want to talk about some design issues, or to discuss just the initial design, these specific people is available to answer your question, basically. And I saw that this was working quite well, for example, for Rust, which is like a quite complex project. So before starting doing anything, you typically have to think hard a couple of times, and you may have questions regarding a lot of other subsystems. And in that case, it is quite nice to have somebody that offers himself to mentor you, so to answer questions and whatever. So it's like, I was thinking that it could be a good idea to have a couple of these help wanted bugs on our GitHub, also tagged with this kind of mentor tag, and start pushing a bit more aggressively, like if there is something small on the security side that need to be implemented. Maybe it's not high priority, so I will not like attacking it right now, but I can help anybody who wants to. So I would propose myself, like I will be able to mentor you if you have any problem, any question. So feel free to tackle this issue and bother me whenever you want. And then once we have a pool of something like 4 or 5 of these kind of tickets, we can more aggressively go around and say on mailing list, IRC, and whenever, like, we welcome everybody to work on these specific topics, and you have these specific people that you can get in touch whenever you want to discuss it. So if it is a good idea, but it needs like some traction from people to be available to mentor, basically, or to have some free time in order to answer questions and to guide people. Especially if they are like newcomer, it could be like a bit time consuming. So that's why I was asking if there is some kind of interest. On my side, there is, of course, but if I'm alone, it doesn't make any sense. So before starting, I was trying to check if there is somebody else following.
I'm definitely interested. So maybe if you want, we can go over some issues tomorrow and tag them as mentor issues. That's completely fine with me.
Okay, for me it would be like one each would be very great. It would be something like 5 for issues, and that would be enough, I guess, in order to start it.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, I see no more topics on the agenda, so unless somebody...
I got one thing to say. Can I?
Yep.
Of course.
Okay, so it's a pity that there's no Iago, Alban, Stevie on call, because they're assignees of our PRs. We got the PRs that are still during the review for much time, and they are blockers for our work a bit. It's all about the KVM flavor, of course. The first is a default routing for Flannel network, and there's a problem with this PR because it's made by old concept. It's by copying the code from CNI, and Stevie actually mentioned that, but I thought that there's acceptance to merge this for the last time, since the networking discussion is still in progress. We also implemented the tests for this. The test also covers another issue for nethost, functionality. And it's reviewed by Yale also, and it's okay. So I just want to ensure that if there is any problem to merge it or any doubts to merge it, that we could know about this, because it's really important to us to get this merged. I can send the pull request.
There he is. There he is.
I'm listening.
Yes.
Stefan. I will go over the pull request again today. There is no, I have no objection merging it in general. I just had concerns about the way the tests were written. I haven't checked it in a couple of days. I think there was work done since I last reviewed it. So I will go over it again.
Okay, thanks. And another thing is hypervisor support for KVM flavor. It's only the part that covers the functionality to maybe change the hypervisor. It's only the refactoring of code for KVM hypervisors to make the possibility to write another drivers for another hypervisors. I mentioned about this a couple of weeks ago, and You probably know that it's about swapping from LKVM to QEMU, but right now it's about extending code, adding more generic code. And it's also reviewed by Yale, by another people, and it looks like it's ready to merge, but we're still waiting. So I just want to be sure that if there's any doubts about merging this, we will know.
I think on that one that Alban was going back and forth with the review on the PR.
Yes.
So I remember it was not completely stuck. I saw that he was checking it every couple of days.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the status right now, but we can have a look.
Yeah, we're on track with review comments. So
I think we had a bit more than a couple of quite big PR in the last 2 weeks, and we were like slowly reviewing all of them and merging. So, for example, the ARM64 one just got in today, and then there is this other Glide one which is quite big. I was working also another big one on the SecCom stuff, so it's like slowly we'll probably sort them out.
thank you.
Anyway, the release is in 2 weeks, so I guess it's gonna get in without any issues soon.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Now I realized that I logged in with the wrong Zoom account because they reminded me that I have like a couple minutes left for this meeting. Sorry about that. So for next time, I will use the credentials from Brendan or from John. I don't have more topics on the agenda, so unless there is no objection, I would like to finish this week's community sync. Thank you very much for all attending.
Thank you.
Before Zoom kicks us out, any more comments? No. Okay. So have a great day, everyone, and see you next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.